Dear homophobes,
racists,
bigots,
transphobes,
and disablists.
there are things this country doesn't welcome.
We don't welcome you attacking people because of their religion, where they're from, or the colour of their skin.
We don't welcome you abusing and bullying disabled people.
we don't welcome threatening gay, lesbian or transgender people with verbal...
Where were you 5-10 years ago, buddy? Where were any of these people 5-10 years ago when transgender people weren't commonly accepted like they are today, when being transgender was still deemed a mental illness and before transgenderism was implemented into an acronym? Where were these people then? Isn't it funny that now that the transgender part has been added to the end of an acronym, which is that of LGB, now T, they now all of a sudden come out of the woodwork to campaign for their rights? It just goes to show how shallow a lot of these people are and how much this has got to do with virtue signalling. Anyway.
or physical abuse.
Haters are not going to hate here.
That's why if we see anything, we're calling the police.
We believe in acceptance.
and it's time you accept that.
Yours, Scotland.
The SNP, a party that seems to be a shadow of its former self in recent times, especially with Nicola Sturgeon at the helm. A party that used to be about getting Scotland independence, to a party that seems to be more obsessed with the idea of going down a road incorporating identity politics and pandering at every turn possible in order to prove to the world that we are somehow a supposed progressive nation, which is a load of bullshit for the most part. And don't get me wrong, I mean, most people aren't racists or xenophobes or homophobes or any of the aforementioned that this campaign proclaims to be against, but that goes without saying, and that's where it becomes pretty crystal clear, especially from where I'm sat, just how much this has got to do with virtue signalling and ego stroking, pretending to the world that they are going to oppose all these supposed evils in society, as if it wasn't for their intervention, then Scotland would still be rampant in all the phobias and hatred under the sun, as if they're going to make a difference, when in reality there is laws already in place for the majority of the things they claim that they're standing up to. You can't actively be racist to people, you can't actively be homophobic to people, you can't actively shout racial slurs across the street or physically assault people for or whatever the case may be. There's already laws in place for these things, but the fact that they won't bring out a campaign to just highlight, just a quick reminder or a highlight of sorts to report any crime. No, they have to go down the route of a couple of stereotypical checkboxes, so to speak, in terms of supposed oppressed minorities within Scotland, in order to show the world that they really care and they've got your best interests at heart. And that is just literally the same as every single party all across the West that's like as far left as possible. They really have to highlight these points. They need to get them across, make them crystal clear. And their latest escapade is no different to that. The term hate crime has come up quite a lot, especially in the last few years, not just from the SNP, but down south as well in England, and it seems to have been getting quite a lot of the time misconstrued with hate incidents, almost so to a point where they've become one and the same. But my idea of a hate crime is completely different to what they now proclaim it is, and with that, I think there's a dangerous precedent being set here when you start to take political identity politics and you place them into the law with some sort of special pedestal of sorts, because it's very easy for the goalposts to be shifted, and we see that quite a lot of the time with some of these definitions that they hold so dearly to their hearts. For example, transphobia, a word that was made up by the left. Transphobia was, you know, being nasty or abusive or tormenting somebody that happened to be transgender. Now it's transphobic to question the validity and the claim of if a transgender is actually really the sex/gender they proclaim they are, or is it just a case of in name only? Well, and as for bigots, well, that is really up for debate under the circumstances of the climate that we live in. Because I don't know how many times I've been referred to as a bigot personally, and how many times I've heard the label being thrown at people, but I don't think that it has the same meaning that it used to mean. Disableists, well, I've never in my life heard of anybody that is actively or openly opposed to people being disabled. If anything, I would probably consider having that viewpoint a bit not right in the head, for lack of better words. And as for homophobia, well, again, that's another one that seems to have a shift of the goalposts, but I mean, it seems to now incorporate people that have that have religious reasons to just oppose it. They're even deemed homophobic, even if they don't openly say anything that would be deemed originally homophobic. But the shifting of the goalposts, as I said, is where the problems could arise. Take Mhairi Black from the SNP, for example, when she talked about misogyny, and imagine for a second that misogyny had been, and I'm actually surprised it wasn't, but imagine for a second misogyny was added in here as well, and listen to her understanding of what misogyny means, and then understand that the definition of misogyny has seen a clear shifting of goalposts.
Bitch, eat shit and die. I could soften some of this by talking about the C word, but the reality is there is no softening when you're targeted with these words, and I'm left reading them on my screen every day, day in, day out. She needs a kick in the cunt, guttural cunt, ugly cunt, wee animal cunt. There is no softening just how sexualised and misogynistic the abuse is. I've been assured multiple times that I don't have to worry because I am so ugly that no one would want to rape me. Now, all of these insults have been tailored to me because I am a woman, as a woman. Now, we can kid ourselves that these are a few bad, anonymous people on Twitter, but it's not. This is everyday common language. Now, I'm aware that everyone in here is uncomfortable at hearing these insults. I feel uncomfortable reading them out. And yet there are people who feel comfortable flinging these words around every day. And when it goes unchallenged, it becomes normalised. And when it becomes normalised, it creates an environment that allows women to be abused. I mean, I understand that we have, you know, members of the public insult people in positions of power regardless of their gender, but when you tailor your abuse because they are a woman, then that's misogynistic. That is misogyny, and that's something that we've got to stamp out. And
now you take her shifting of the goalposts in terms of what misogyny means, you combine it with hate incidents, which is any action considered to be a hate incident, and that can include when a victim feels like what happened to them solely because of some form of prejudice / discrimination. Then you combine it with this escapade, and it's a recipe for potential disaster. You know what I mean? The shifting of the goalposts, the fact that Mhairi Black was able to stand there and be accepted for what she said, even when it could be potentially fucking wrong, which it, for the most part it is. The fact that people sat on Twitter chatting abuse to her, but because it happened to have certain words included in the sentences that acknowledge the fact that she happened to be a woman, therefore it must have been due to misogyny, when in reality it was just words that they knew would rub her up the wrong way, as she even acknowledged that men and women both get abuse on Twitter. So that's what it is, it's just abuse. And this is the sort of avenue or cul-de-sac you could find yourself in when you go down this route, and you start to deliberately or intentionally, all in the name of virtue signaling and pretending to be open and inclusive, when you start to highlight certain people in society and put them on pedestals, you start to give off the, well, you start to create a mindset in people that allows them to believe that the only reason something mean or something negative happened to them, it only happened to them purely because of their whatever, well, whether it be the race, the religion, or sexual orientation, or the disability, or whatever, you know. So it kind of sets them apart from the rest of society when you go down an avenue like this, and it's just not really the right way to go about things. As I said, this is all about virtue signaling. If you really wanted to stamp out supposed hate crimes, then you would do so for all. But you have deliberately highlighted certain aspects of society, and I can't help but think that this is purely down to stroking your own ego and pretending that you give a fuck about these people, when in reality, 10, 20 years ago, I don't think you did. You know what I mean? Don't get me wrong. Nobody likes being bullied. Nobody likes harassment or violence or whatever it may be. And most people ain't like that. But I don't think we need the SNP to come out and tell us not to be that way. And I don't think the SNP are going to be able to do anything that hasn't been done before them. I just think this sets a dangerous precedent, man. Precedent, sorry. Keep saying that word wrong. Having said, better go. Peace.